Ready? Okay. I'll call to order the regular meeting of the Common Council of the City of Platteville for Tuesday, August 14th at 7 o'clock PM in the council chambers, and we'll start with roll call.
Barb Doss.
Here.
Ken Killian.
Here.
Eileen Nichols.
Here.
Don Francis.
Here.
Cena Sharp.
Here.
Robin Klein.
Here.
And Barb Stockhausen.
Here.
All right, first item on our agenda this evening is consideration of the consent calendar. The following items may be approved on a single motion and vote due to their routine nature or previous discussion. Please indicate to the council president if you would prefer separate discussion and action. First item is the council minutes from our July 24th regular meeting. B is payment of bills. C is financial report for July. D is appointments to boards and commissions. I have none this evening, although we do have some vacancies in Board of Appeals and also the Plan Commission and the Commission on Aging, among others. So please go to platteville.org. Volunteer your time for the betterment of the city, please. Thank you. Licenses, change of name for Tina Marie Jarrett for the premises at 7595 North 2nd Street. It will now be known as the Gym. It was formerly the City Bar. Temporary Class B to sell fermented malt beverages for the Platteville J.C.'s for Dairy Days, September 7th through the 9th. And 1-year and 2-year operator licenses to sell and serve alcohol. Also a parade permit for Dairy Days on Saturday, September 8th, starting at 9:30 a.m. And to reschedule the August 28th Common Council meeting, which will start at 6 p.m. instead of 7 p.m. Is there a motion on the consent calendar?
I move to approve the consent calendar.
Second.
We have a motion and a second, and we'll vote.
Doss.
Yes.
Killian.
Yes.
Nichols.
Yes.
Francis.
Yes.
Sharp.
Yes.
Klein.
Yes.
Stockhausen.
Yes.
Motion carried 7-0 on a roll call vote.
All right, next is citizens' comments, observations, and petitions. I know we have a lot of people who have asked to either speak or registered on the ATV, UTV question, but we do have one person who is wishing to speak not on that subject. David, if you give your name and your address, please.
Hello, my name is David Nevins. I'm the Director of Campus Activities at the University of Wisconsin-Platteville. For all of you, you are now my representatives, for I live in the city of Platteville. Yeah, save those applause because you haven't heard me yet. Other things that I would like to talk with you about. Can you hear me okay? Even if you can't, I'll just yell louder. Obviously, I've been coming here and doing this presentation for 20 plus years. The word has finally gotten out, and that's why you're all here. Appreciate you all for coming tonight. Last year I saw myself on TV. I had a light color. This year I wore black because it's slimming. It's worked. Hasn't it? I don't even know why I'm bothering with you people right now. Hey, I'm going to talk to you about Welcome Weekend at the University of Wisconsin-Platteville. It happens September 1st, 2nd, and 3rd, and I want to go over just some of the highlights with you, things that you should and should not do. For example, on Saturday, the 1st of September, you should not come to campus between 8 a.m. and 2 p.m. That would be a bad time for you to be there. We will have somewhere in the neighborhood of 1,300 students moving in on that day, so you don't want to be around campus at that time. Other things that are happening on that Saturday that you need to be aware of. The Chancellor is doing a student convocation in the field house that day. Students are invited to that. It's a good kickoff for the academic information students need to know. We will be having, once again, returning to the scavenger hunt downtown here. As you know, a lot of you take part in that. We've had somewhere in the neighborhood of 1,300 students each year take part in it. We leave from the city park here. We work closely with Downtown Association and the Chamber of Commerce. We couldn't do it without them, and it's just an amazing event for us to be able to welcome new students to Platteville. That evening is our first outdoor amplified sound event. It happens at 8 o'clock on the softball field on campus. It's called Playfair. It's just a huge interactive icebreaker. The next day is Sunday morning. Things I want to highlight about Sunday include Bridge Fest. We have somewhere in the neighborhood of 40 to 50 current Platteville businesses, along with 60 to 70 student organizations that will be set up tables over by Bridgeway. It's just an information fair. Also that evening, a lot of the council members have these lovely posters. This year we've scored kind of a coup in that our welcome back band is a band called Skillet. Do any of you know Skillet?
Yes.
No.
Right now, we've sold somewhere in the neighborhood of 1,400 tickets. We do have several hundred left. If you're interested in attending, tickets can be purchased through the box office or online. They are an amazing band. And when I say a coup, we really did it. It's going to happen indoors this year, because my friend Ken always wants to know how loud it's going to be. Well, here we go. We're doing it indoors because it's going to be loud, okay? They are a rock band. They are phenomenal. If you have a chance to look them up, they are simply phenomenal. If any of you have gone down to Dubuque for the Fighting Saints games, at the start of those home games, they often play a song called Invincible. That's Skillet. And it's just an amazing kind of upbeat driving rock show. That happens at 8 o'clock that night. Monday is Labor Day. We have a number of things that are going on campus. But you need to be aware of, that's also the Pizza Palooza. We contact all the pizza vendors here in town and we invite them to campus. And we send them letters. And in the letters we tell them, you're welcome to come to campus. You're welcome to come and meet our students. Here's the caveat. You have to bring enough pizza to feed 1,400. And they all do. So Pizza Hut and Steve's and Domino's, they're all there. We will be doing outdoor movie this year. The outdoor movie that we're showing is the new Jumanji. You, of course, are welcome. It's on the green space just to the west of the Student Center. It's an amazing, amazing fun event. Next day we start classes. Do you have any questions, my friends?
Questions, all right.
That's what happens. I've been doing it for so long. You
David,
guys-
David,
Yes,
you
Barb.
said you didn't need people on campus between 8 and 2 on Saturday because it's move-in time. If people came, though, they could help students move in, right?
That would be
Yeah.
That would be a miracle. And yes, that would be phenomenal. In fact, that would be really something for the council members maybe to do as a community service project.
Thanks, David.
Just throwing that
If
out
I
there for your
throw it out, I
consideration.
have to take it.
Thank you, everybody. Have a great year. Thanks for listening, and come back next year. These presentations get better all the time.
Thank you, David. David is the only person that has asked to speak this evening. Everyone else, as far as I know, was ATV, UTV. All right. So, next is reports that are in our packet. The Water and Sewer Financial Report for July, Airport Financial Report for July, and Department Progress Reports. Are there any questions from the council members on any of those reports?
It's not in the reports, but I'll do it under airport financial report. Tomorrow night is the fly-in hamburger social at the airport. And again, we're planning the grand opening for the it's not refinished, resurfaced.
Resurfaced.
I was like, what? Resurfaced runway on September 19th. And we have a couple of very special events planned for that grand opening. You won't want to miss it.
Any other council members have any questions or comments? All right. Then we are going to go on to our first action item this evening, Ordinance 1807, permitting ATVs, UTVs on designated routes in the city of Platteville. I don't believe we have any staff report, unless, Doug, did you want to say something at this
Just
point?
the fact that, at the request of local ATV, UTV enthusiasts, city staff has been researching the issue, and it's been well documented, the efforts that have been undertaken. The open house on June 11th, work session on the 24th of July, I mean, it's all come to the culmination of tonight's action item.
Okay. And certainly the information has been on platteville.org. And we have a lot of information that's been made available to us this evening, and that packet would have been available also at the library and here at City Hall. And most of the information that we're seeing in our packet is just a repeat of what's been discussed at previous meetings. So having said that, we do have some people who have asked to speak. I think I'm going to start with Paul Erickson, who would like to speak for informational purposes only.
Well, thank you. I'm speaking on behalf of Chancellor Dennis J. Shields, who could not be here tonight. He submitted a letter, which I am going to read to you as well. I have already submitted it to the council. It says, to the Platteville City Council, while I appreciate being asked for input about ATV usage in the city, the University of Wisconsin-Platteville does not have an official stance on this issue and refers to our elected officials to reach a decision in the best interest of this community. As a reminder, the only university officials who are authorized to speak on the university's behalf regarding this are me, which is Chancellor Shields, Vice Chancellor for University Relations, Rose Smirsky, Vice Chancellor for Administrative Services, Paige Smith, and Public Information Officer Paul Erickson, which really is me. All other opinions are those of individuals. I wish you luck in deliberation of this issue. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. We have, and again, these are handed to me in no certain order, so I am going to start with people who are against, I guess. Bob Harding would like to register against, and Amy Seaboth Wilson would like to speak against. So Amy, if you can come up to the microphone, please. Give
Hi,
your name
everybody.
and your address, thank you.
Yep, Amy Seaboth Wilson, 555 North Water Street. It is amazing how nervous I get standing up here now, even after being on council. It's amazing. So I wanted to start by saying, having been on council, I understand the magnitude of these decisions, right? Like, the job of council usually is to make decisions in an instance where there's no clear decision to be made, because otherwise it wouldn't have to make it to a public authority, right? It just would have been done behind the scenes. So this is a complex decision, and I understand that. And I wanted to exhibit how complex I understand it is when I first found out about the ATV proposal, I thought it would be a really good thing for the community. I live on one of the routes, and I'm a bicyclist, and my kids walk, well, my 11-year-old walks down the street all the time, and all the neighborhood kids do, and I see it happen, and I know that we have a pretty residential street, even though it's also a busy traffic street. And I thought ATVs might actually induce traffic calming, right? Like, if there's more motorized or more transportation types on the road, maybe we would all pay more attention to each other, slow down, and drive more carefully, which could be really advantageous to our community. But I went and started doing research, and I wasn't able to find much that supported my first thoughts. In fact, I found a lot of studies that had been done in states and communities that had allowed ATVs, and accidents went up and safety went down. Iowa found, for example, between 2002 and 2009, that when they introduced ATVs onto the roads, there were, I can't say more accidents because they didn't measure that, but they did say that out of the ATV accidents, 1 out of 3 involved another party other than the ATV. And that's where it really hit home to me, that I started to really seriously question, is this the best thing for my community? Because this is a community decision, right? I totally respect that people want to do ATVing, and it's an activity that's fun and it can bring people together and have all these advantages. I just seriously don't think that it's the right place and time to be doing it. And part of that reason is because the ATVs are still a fairly new vehicle on roads, right? Cars have gone through like decades of like revisions and improvements and lawsuits. ATVs are pretty new. And so I defer to the council to say this could be a good thing for our community, but honestly, I don't think I want our community to be the guinea pig. Like, too much research in other communities and showing that it actually is harmful, and unsafe. And therefore, I would ask the council to not approve this tonight and allow other communities to experiment a little bit before we go ahead and adopt an ordinance that would allow it on our streets. Thank you.
Thank you. We have others who have asked to speak in favor. Isaac Shanley?
I'm Isaac Shanley from 1030 Steamer Street here in Platteville. So I'll just start off with what Amy said here about the studies from 2002 to 2009. I've read the majority of those studies as well, and those studies primarily are on roads or highways that have speed limits of 45 to 55 miles an hour or higher. You know, we're looking at a town that I think the fastest speed limit in the city is on Business 151 of 30 miles an hour. We've been looking for studies and reports within cities or villages that limit your speed limit to 35 miles and under. And I haven't found a wreck or an accident that involved another person or another vehicle there at all. So we'll just start with that. So I know there's been a lot of things that we've talked about over the past 2 or 3 months here, so I'm not going to go over everything. A couple of the most recent things we'll discuss, though, is about we'll do economics, and we'll start with the city's economics here. I worked in Darlington last Wednesday on the 8th. Drove past the Darlington campground coming in on County Road Z at about 9 o'clock. And I noticed on Wednesday down there, their campground had 4 campers and 1 tent for what I saw, and they all had UTVs out front. At the gas station in town, there was 2 more UTVs filling up, and this was on a Wednesday at 9 a.m. I got back to Platteville about 1 o'clock that afternoon. I didn't see 1 camper in our campground. Sunday morning, about 9 o'clock, went by our campground again. Once again, it's sitting there empty. Called out in Darlington, their campground was full. 30-some stalls sitting there full all weekend. They have the same policy that we do. It's a first come, first serve, no reservations. So the city is making money that way. Then you do trickle-down economics. If somebody's spending money there, they're spending money in town. They're doing gas, they're doing food, restaurants. We did the survey on Main Street with the petitions. We had 92% of the businesses that we contacted on Main Street said yes. They signed a petition in favor. The 2 that did not sign it, they did not say no. They weren't against it. They just said that, they're not comfortable with signing any petitions at all. So, parking. We keep hearing about the issue with parking. People are having complaints about, or having issues about people bringing these into town and where we're going to park them at. Between 3rd Street and 4th Street, there's 4 parking stalls on the north side of the street. If you were to come up on Main Street and you saw 4 UTVs parked there instead of vehicles and they're sitting empty, what does it matter what type of vehicle they are? They're spending money somewhere in this town. So they take the same amount of stalls just like a vehicle does. We've already went over all the petitions that you guys wanted done, the survey you wanted done. All the answers primarily came back in favor of. The top 2 answers were they were in favor of. For the I support proposed routes, and the second one was I agree with the proposed hours in operation. Then if you add the ones that we're in favor of it with maybe some changes, those percentages go even higher instead of the ones that are against it. Again, before we, part of it was on the safety sticker that's on the machines. I've sent you guys all copies of that. I have one here, just on a brand new 2019 machine. And that does read, do not allow operation on public road unless designated for off-highway vehicle access. So those are changing. The manufacturers are starting to realize these are coming on roads, and they're changing those as well. Then we'll go to the general tax aid, or GTA, that Platteville gets the money from the Wisconsin DOT. And the primary funds from those are from motor fuel taxes. The city last year got $698,432 from that. So more people that are spending money buying fuel, the taxes, can bring more money into the town for that fund. And that fund is for road maintenance and police costs. So once again, we're somewhat offsetting the cost of that as well. The ordinance that we have drafted, which was drafted by the city attorney, if you were to put everything and look through it all together, it would be one of the most restrictive ordinances in the state of Wisconsin within a city. Some were a little bit more lenient on than other cities, but some were tighter on. The closing throughout the winter, wasn't able to find a city that does that, but that's what it is. For anybody that states, they're concerned about the increased traffic that's bringing to Platteville. if you're worried about more traffic from the ATVs and UTVs, it's about like you're saying that no existing business in the city of Platteville should grow, no new business should come to town, and the university should never grow. Because any one of those that would happen is going to bring more traffic to this town. So, just as a closure, Sunday I went for a ride with 3 other machines. There's 11 of us total, all the way from 3 years old all the way up to 46 years old in age, but about 125 plus miles on our machines. Other than buying gas in this town, we spent pretty much all day on the road. We ate at 2 different towns and restaurants. We met, I don't know how many other countless machines on the road. They were spending money as well, but they weren't spending money in this town because they couldn't. So, any questions at all or comments?
Thank you, Isaac.
All right.
Next is Kurt Timlin.
Kurt Timlin, 2096, County Road A, Platteville, Wisconsin, an outsider. I'd like to start out by saying, obviously, I appreciate everybody's service up here, and I realize sometimes we have to deal with these contentious issues, and it makes it difficult. And I do understand that, and I appreciate that. I appreciate the fact that tonight, when I look around this room, the overwhelming majority of this room is in favor of doing this. These surveys came back in favor of. So far, this group has done everything that's been asked of them, and we have put in a lot of time on it. And what's come up is that overwhelmingly people in town, people out of town that want to come to this town are all in favor of it. Thank you.
Thank you. Joshua Placzynski?
My name's Josh Placzynski, 560 East Mineral Street in Platteville. And I just like to start out by saying I'm all for this. It is going to bring more city revenue. And as the previous gentleman said, and I spoke to a couple other individuals today from all of the surrounding cities and counties that do this, we are the cutoff point between several different cities. So when people come towards Platteville, from like Cuba City or somewhere else or Potosi or something through the trails, I was told today that they had to bring out their pickup trucks, put them on a trailer, drive them through or around Platteville to the other side of the trails and drop their ATVs, get back on the routes and everything. So to me, it would be more feasible to open these routes so all the outskirt traffic can come through. You can host events, you can host whatever, local businesses will make money. In my opinion, there is no reason the city council should not do this. And the city of Platteville should not do this. Thank you.
Thank you. Clay Schaefer?
Clay Schaefer, 945 Seamers, Platteville. About 5 o'clock, I was sitting down for supper, and the phone rang, and my daughter got on the phone, and she said, "Dad, could you speak tonight at the council meeting?" And I said, "Well, what do you want me there for?" She said, "Well, Isaac and several other people are going to talk, and we need an old person's opinion." So, from an old person's perspective, here I am. I was a teacher and coach for 32 years in this community, and during that time I taught politics in a law class. And one of the components of the law class was that you are innocent until proven guilty. Unfortunately, I think some people in this room are condemning these people before they're proved innocent. And I'd like to kind of expound on that a little bit. I read by the local paper, and I do read my local paper religiously. I hope that's an accepted term. That several communities around us allow the ATVs to use their streets and roads. The Darlingtons, the Lancasters, the Keelers. And I have spoke to several people from those communities. And when I was also as an official, I've been to Darlington and watched the ATVs go by the field when I'm umpiring. Lancaster, My son lives in Lancaster now, and only recently have they allowed the vehicles up there on all streets, not just the designated streets that the ATV people want here. And my son has said, Dad, no problem so far. It's okay. Only recently I've spoken to the mayor of Keeler. And the mayor of Keeler says, yes, we allow them on our streets, and they're doing well. My business is doing very, very well. And 98% of the people are fine with it. There are minor problems, as there are going to be minor problems with any vehicles we have here in town. I know that there's been a problem, or not a problem rather, but a question as to, are these vehicles made for the streets and roads? And some people say yes, and some people say no. Well, to use an analogy with that, in a few weeks we're going to have many people in here, Mr. Digman's over here and some other people, using their corn pickers going up and down the roads. And I know they're not made for the roads and the streets, but they're going to be on the roads, and we have to watch out for them. Now, they're just going from one field or part of the farm to the other. Likewise, the ATV people want to go from one part of town to the other part of town to get on their trails. So they need access to these streets. They need that. As a teacher, I've had several students throughout the years. I've had several of your students, your children, I've had as my students. And they have become very responsible citizens. I look around this room and I see some of my old students in this room at this time. And according to my daughter, I do feel old at this time. But I see the people in here who have become very good citizens, responsible citizens. You're paying your taxes, you're following the laws, you're being good people. And I think that that's what we're talking about here. What I propose, and I think it's been proposed before, and maybe some of the ATV people would not be in favor of this, but what I propose is a one-year probationary period. And during that time, allow them to utilize the streets they've designated to prove to the council and to themselves that we are responsible people. We can follow the laws. I know that these people will police themselves. Isaac's going to get a hold of some people and wring their necks if they have to, right, Isaac? Now, as any time, up and down my street, you come on Seymour Street, and maybe I've yelled at a few of you people in here, slow down. Well, the same thing's going to happen if you're going up and down the streets or on these designated streets now with these ATVs. Slow down. Our speaker before, we've got children out there. I've got grandchildren out there. My daughter, and I don't have an ATV, and I'll never have one, but my daughter and son-in-law have an ATV. And I consider my son-in-law a very responsible person. He's not going to take my grandchildren's life in vain and speed down these highways. If he does so, he's answering to me, not to you people. And he won't do that. I know he won't do that. Okay? In conclusion, I as a teacher, I saw an old sign in my desk, and I pulled it out the other day. And it had to do with, especially now, when your kids are coming to school and they're changing grades. And what happens as a teacher, especially high school or whatever grade it is, it didn't matter, that you're going to have your student going to a new grade. And the old saying was, teachers, dear teacher, don't have my student be judged by what other teachers said. Let them prove to themselves or to you that they're good students. To the council, I would say, dear council, don't let the ATV people be prejudged by what others have said. Let them prove to you that they are responsible. Thank you.
Thank you. Jason Arts?
Jason Arts, 985 North Court Street. So I just want to bring up a couple things that I have concerns about. And I've been riding various recreational vehicles for the past probably 20 years. My preferred mode of transportation in this area is motorcycling, but I have ridden ATVs, haven't ridden any of the new UTVs, but I kind of have a feel for, you know, the ATVs. And I think what I'm struggling with is that there's a group of people that I'm for this, I want this to happen because, you know, it's a sport that I enjoy. But at the same time, I feel like there are things that haven't been discussed, such as ATVs, UTVs being classified as recreational vehicles in Wisconsin. And correct me if I'm wrong, anyone, when I'm talking about this, because I want to make sure that I'm providing the correct information. But because they're classified as recreational vehicles, they're not held to the same traffic laws as other vehicles. So if somebody on an ATV got pulled over for drunk driving or speeding, it's a fine. It doesn't go on your record. You don't get charged with an OWI. It doesn't go against your license, which to me is kind of an issue. The other issue that, and correct me if I'm wrong, is this something that people have been working on for like the past 2 years? Is that correct? More than that? Okay. And I guess, and maybe I just didn't pay attention, maybe I wasn't looking for more information, but if this has been going on that long, it seems like the first time that really kind of a community-wide informational session was presented was in June. And correct me if I'm wrong again, maybe there were other things proposed before that, but that was the first time that I really kind of heard this really becoming a thing. And I just feel like, again, I've seen this with the AMA, which is the American Motorcycle Association, other advocacy groups for recreational vehicles. They do these things, and it frustrates me that sometimes they don't have public engagement. And then they propose something, and then they get pushback because people don't know our sport, you know? And I feel like this 2 years could have been, or 2 years or more, could have been a great opportunity to provide education to the community about, okay, what is ATVing? What is UTVing? What does it look like? You know, because again, you present something that people don't have information about, they get afraid. It's change. They're like, okay, what does this mean? And then, you know, with it being only a couple months where people have had a chance to voice their opinions, it seems like, you know, maybe that's what's got people kind of opposing this. So those are some of my concerns. Again, this, you know, with me being a part of the recreational vehicle community, I really want to see something happen. But, you know, again, there's some concerns, and, you know, the process that I've seen so far has kind of missed the mark in some spots. But thank you for letting me speak.
Thank you. Those are the only individuals who have asked to speak, but I have a number of people who have registered in favor, and I apologize in advance for mispronouncing names because I probably will do that. Tina Lynch, Mariah Hall, Chris Richard, Ann Rupp, Jessica Rorick, Lisa McPhail Bench, that might not be right, Jason Rorick, Dan Oyen, Nick Sang, Denise Johnson, Jerry Roberts, Jeremy Saluzas, something like that. Can't tell if that's a J, might be a J instead of an S. Jill Wiederholt, Clint Warnemont, excuse me. Chelsea Shea, Dave Lipska, John Shea, Jeff Rorick, Chad Digman, Bridget Iverson, John Guile, Jason Thompson, Brandon Lipska, Michelle Cullen, Jeff Faraday, Jake Faraday, Cheryl Jenkins, Jeremiah Jenkins, Loris LeCompte, Jeff Noble, Nick Peace, Brent Bowers, Tim Bolt, perhaps, is that right? Robert Digman, Dan Faraday, Brian Keitlinger, Matt and Lori Loring, Jane Meekma, Karen Schneller, James Schneller, Ron Mann, Bill Ingersoll, Parth Patel, Sue Winky, Jeff Udelhoven, Nick Lightfried, Josh Trentz, Katie Trentz, Jody Richards, Justin Richards, Aaron Plemer, Gray Fink, Kathy Kopp, Joe Kopp, and also Leland F. Blench. So all those people have registered in favor of the ATV UTV question. So now it's time for council discussion or a motion.
Well, Madam President, I'll just make a motion. I think that's what you're supposed to do before you have a discussion. So I have looked at this ordinance, and by the way, I'm incredibly happy to see that its first provision is to adopt Section 2333 of the state statutes, which is the statute that governs ATVs and UTVs. So I move the adoption of Ordinance 1807 with the following changes. On designated routes, that's 3817, parent 5, Section A, numbers 1, 2, and 3, I would propose that the designated routes be as follows. County Highway B from the west entrance to Platteville, through Platteville, and out the northeast entrance. County Highway D from the southwest entrance to its intersection with Business Highway 151, then Business Highway 151, which we call Water Street. Then Business Highway 151 to its intersection with Highways 80 and 81, then north on 80 and 81, that's Water Street, to the Main Street intersection, and 3rd Street from Main Street north to Furnace Street. Those are the routes. A second change, in addition to routes, a change in the hours of operation to not allow ATV, UTV traffic from sunset to sunrise. In 3817, parent 7, letter D, it talks about headlights and taillights. I think there should be a mention that there need to be working brake lights on these vehicles. In 3817, parent 7, letter F, I would suggest these be closed from sunset to sunrise. And in the next section closed from November 15th to April 1st, which is our winter rules. I would suggest the addition of a statement that prohibits ATVs and UTVs from pulling trailers or similar things. And also an addition that requires a permit obtained 10 days in advance for organized rides of 8 or more ATVs or UTVs, and that this ordinance be effective through November 14th, 2019.
I second.
We have a motion and a second? All right, council discussion?
Highway B, is that going through Main Street
Coming right down Main Street,
down to 8081?
all the way out by the museum, makes a turn and goes out toward the mount. That's County B, I believe. So County B goes through Platteville in that direction. So it would be Main Street, West Main. It would go by my house. It would be West Main Street. It would be Broadway. That'd be County B.
But they're going through Main Street downtown.
That would be correct.
Nothing on the north side of town, correct?
That's correct.
And again, please note the addition of when you're on Main Street in this proposal, you would be allowed to turn north onto 3rd Street to access parking.
The parking lots on
Parking
3rd
lot.
Street are newly constructed parking lots on 3rd Street.
And the other thing, Barb, just so I'm clear, is that if you went down Main Street and you were at the intersection of Main and Water, which is where we have the stoplights, you could turn right.
You could turn right and go down by Quick Trip, and then when you got to the intersection just past by Walgreens, that intersection, you would be able to turn right and go out of town to the right. And there's parking down there, so if people wanted to go to any number of restaurants, there would be places they could park and go to restaurants.
How about the inclusion of directional lights? Some of these vehicles do not have directional lights,
That's not part of my proposal.
so some will be without.
Out of clarification, can I ask, are motorcycles required to have, all motorcycles required to have blinkers after dark?
I believe that they are, but it's not a light dark provision, it's just part of their legal definition.
All scooters, motorcycles, anything
Right,
else?
in
blinkers
terms
are
of their
always-
definition by DOT.
And I understand Jason's concern that these vehicles are not governed, even though we're trying to move them to the road, they are not governed by the same laws that govern the operation of motorcycles or cars or trucks or other things on the road. By the way, this ordinance also does include a provision that the maximum decibel level would be 95 decibels. I've read through a lot of the information that you collected, Chief, from the other communities, and that's kind of where I came up with some of this.
95 decibels is about the noise of a lawnmower. So I don't think people would like to have a lawnmower going by their house.
Any other
Well,
comment?
the permit for rides, I like the idea of being notified. I imagine 8 vehicles could be like 2 or 3 families.
It's like, my belief is if there's going to be an organized ride in town, the police should be aware of it. Since I have not participated in organized rides, I'm struggling through a number, but 8 seem to be,
Did you see anything else similar to that?
no, I just,
Yeah.
yeah.
What?
But I thought,
Could we
I mean,
throw out
it's
a
a
question?
trial.
What
I
would
mean,
you like, do you think?
I believe Isaac said on a ride that he went on recently in Crawford County, they had the groups of 6. So I think I picked 8 because that seemed to be more than the 6 that he referenced.
Right.
Isaac, was that right? I mean, I was like, maybe they, I think that probably gets to be an issue in
Well,
places.
I'm just thinking, how many phone calls do we want the police department to get, right? Maybe there's a number that might be less frequent, but still, I don't know. I don't know what the magic number is either, but I felt like 8 seemed a little too common as far as.
Well, and again, the other thing is that this is a review in a year, so if it really becomes an issue, if 8 is just simply too small a number, then I think that would be a time for the council to look at it again, and I do like the idea that we are going to review it after a year. I think the date, is there a date in here when we would actually,
November 14th, that would
November
coincide
14th.
with the end of the season.
End of
So it would
2019.
allow the entire season.
right,
And the stretch into Mountain View Park, is that intentionally left off? To actually go into Mountain View and park, you would need
I
permission to drive
have
that little bit of
concerns
road?
about Mountain View Park, in terms of, I think that should, I have concerns about trailering and taking ATVs off and the limitation, how we're gonna limit that. I don't think we've talked about Mountain View Park, but we know that motorized vehicles aren't to travel on the grass in Mountain View Park. I don't know if the campground is set up such that we have designated. So, I
looking
mean,
for
we
that
could
traffic,
always amend to help out that issue, but we haven't really discussed at length the whole camping and how that whole thing happens there and where on the ground. I mean, because you can't just take it off and not run it. I mean, I know you can't take a machine off of a trailer and not run it somewhere.
So the parking lot and the road, but
Right, but will that,
temptation
yeah.
to drive it into the grass, I hear.
A question? Anybody else have a comment?
I do.
Okay.
The reason I voted for or seconded this, I thought I'd tell everybody how much paper I received on this issue, which is really good. I'm pleased that everyone is interested in knowing how important this is to our community. I want to emphasize that there were two other folks from Seymour Street. I am also from Seymour Street. In fact, Mr. Schaefer is 20 feet away and we share the same clothesline together. So I listened to him, and his comment immediately, I go over and I ask, and it says, why not? Why don't we have this opportunity? And my street, our street, is the direct link from Madison Street to the park. Our street is basically, you can't move on it during Dairy Days or 4th of July. It is parking on both sides, and to me, that's money in town. That's what I look at it like. Also, I'm really pleased that Barb has put on here Dubuque Road, which is where most of our restaurants are. We need to have these families have an opportunity to stop for, as my neighbors would say, a bite to eat. They are important parts of our community, are the restaurants. Parking, we have beautiful parking lots. We have beautiful businesses on Main Street. We have restaurants, we have shopping, we have what we want. And to have opportunity to do that, I think is very important. One of these documents here stated that visual effect, having businesses be seen by these family vehicles, to me, being a business owner, is very important. The more visibility, the better, because they come back. They come back to use our facilities, our businesses, our restaurants at another time. The groups of traveling, when there's a going around, I think stop signs and stop lights will change that. People will move like all other vehicles do. As a side note, I find moped speed on my road. I think bikes are not always lit. We have bikers that bring those little carts with children in them. And going down my street, we're a visual street, and we want to be part of the community, and we are part of the community. So I think this proposed ordinance is really important to our community. Thank you much.
Anyone else have a comment?
I want to say that I based my vote on the information given in the survey report, the first part from the Platteville residents. That's about 19 pages of comments. Also, I based my vote upon what people have said to me about this, as far as ATVs and UTVs, and also the letters we've received. Amy Seaboth Wilson sent us a letter as far as use of ATVs, UTVs, and also we got a letter from Iowa a person that works in the medical profession, and he talked about ATVs. So I based my vote on a number of sources. Thank you.
Eileen?
Yes.
I prepared a statement.
Yep.
When this proposal was first introduced in May, I thought there was not enough public input, planning, or information to go forward. And I voiced that at the meeting. Turns out I was onto something. This change would have a huge effect on the people of Platteville, and there was a lot to learn about the issue. The amount of discussion, research, data, emails, phone calls, online posts, and evidence that has come to light in the past 2 months has shown that this is not a simple proposal to just give a rubber stamp approval. Allowing off-road vehicles on city streets has dangerous consequences. The amount of people that I have been in contact about this has surpassed any other city issue, and it's an overwhelming majority against ATVs in the city of Platteville. I've been in contact with many citizens in my district, in the city, students and staff on campus, professors, people outside the city, the DNR, the medical field, law enforcement, the Consumer Federation of America, and Representative Tranel's office. I have not taken this lightly. It's absorbed a lot of my time, and we're not getting paid for this. I do not believe the supporters of using ATVs on pavement really think there is any danger. If they did, they would not be pushing for off-road vehicles to be on city streets. If they understood the danger, they would heed the warning placed on virtually all the vehicles and found throughout their owner's manual saying, "Never use on public roads." These vehicles are not designated for roadway use. They have a relatively narrow track and high center of gravity. These design features allow for riding in wooded areas and between obstacles and provide high ground clearance for rough terrain. However, these features put ATVs at a higher risk for rollovers and require that the vehicle takes wider turns than are found in standard road design. They have low-pressure, deep-tread tires designed for off-road use. Automobile tires have relatively shallow tread and are designed to continually grip and release roadway surfaces. In contrast, ATV tires are made to grab off-road terrain and can act unpredictably on roadway surfaces, especially with increasing speed. The operator can easily lose control of the vehicle, potentially endangering the operator and passengers, occupants of other vehicles, pedestrians, and bicyclists. Most ATVs lack a rear differential. Most ATVs have a solid rear axle or locked rear differential, which means that both the inside and outside wheels rotate at the same speed, unlike motor vehicles designed for roadways. This often requires that the ATV take wider turns than are found in standard road design and makes it more difficult for ATVs to negotiate roadway curves, especially at speeds often traveled on roads. Even the manufacturers are telling us to never use these off-road vehicles on pavement. Honda, Yamaha, Kawasaki, Arctic, Can-Am, Polaris, etc. So, the Yamaha 2018 Wolverine X4 Owner's Manual, found on page 5. This vehicle is designed and manufactured for off-road use only. Use on public streets, roads, or highways is not only illegal in most areas, it also increases the risk of an accident involving other vehicles. This vehicle does not meet federal motor vehicle safety standards for on-road use. Page 21, avoid paved surfaces. This vehicle is designed for off-road use only. Page 22, do not operate this vehicle on any public street, road, or highway. The Can-Am Outlander Series 2018 Operator's Guide, page 13. This vehicle is not designed to ride on paved surfaces. This vehicle is not designed for riding on roads or highways. In most places, it is an illegal practice. Riding your vehicle on roads or highways could cause a collision with another vehicle. Page 22, never operate this vehicle on any public street, road, or highway. Page 65, warning label, never use on public roads. The Kimco UXV 500 Owner's Manual, a side-by-side off-road vehicle. Page 9, never use on public highways where a collision with cars or trucks can occur. This label's on the dash. Always use an approved helmet and protective gear. That's something that's not been talked about at all. Page 14, warnings. Potential hazard. Operating your UTV on paved surfaces. What can happen? Your UTV tires are designed for off-road use only, not for use on pavement. Paved surfaces may seriously affect vehicle handling and may result in your inability to control the vehicle. How do you avoid this hazard? Never operate your UTV on any paved surface, including but not limited to sidewalks, driveways, parks, parking lots, and streets. Page 39 is a sound judgment page. Under paved surfaces, avoid driving your UTV on paved surfaces. Your UTV was not designed for use on pavement, and its handling will become more difficult and unpredictable when riding on non-paved surfaces. For the Polaris 2018 Owner's Manual for Ranger XP 1000 EPS, page 18, safety. This vehicle is for off-road use only. Never operate on public roads. Always avoid paved surfaces. Page 11, safety. Safe riding gear. Always wear a helmet, eye protection, gloves, long sleeve shirt, long pants, over the ankle boots, and seat belts at all times. So, yeah, that's a good example right there. Page 22, safety. Operating on pavement. This vehicle's tires are designed for off-road use only, not for use on pavement. Operating this vehicle on paved surfaces, including sidewalks, paths, parking lots, and driveways, may adversely affect the handling of the vehicle and may increase the risk of loss of control and accident or rollover. Avoiding operating this vehicle on pavement. Avoid it. If it's unavoidable, travel slowly, travel short distances, and avoid sudden turns and stops. Under operating on public roads, operating this vehicle on public streets, roads, or highways could result in a collision with another vehicle. Never operate this vehicle on any public street, road, or highway, including dirt and gravel roads. That was just a few examples of owner's manuals. There's hundreds. I apologize if that was a lot of evidence to hear, but it's being glossed over. They all have a similar message: do not drive on roads. So I cannot disregard this evidence about the engineering and manufacture of an off-road vehicle and simply agree with the ATV supporters to think nothing bad will happen if ATVs are allowed on the streets. Citizens have voiced that to me too, and the council as well. I believe the engineers, and that they made a specific vehicle for a specific use. The ATV Safety Institute has golden rules, which include never ride on paved roads, because ATVs are designed for operated off-highway. The Recreational Off-Highway Vehicle Association has safety rules as well. Number 2 is avoid paved surfaces. ROVs are designed to be operated off-highway. Unfortunately, all this evidence might not be enough for some. The idea that tourism dollars will come seems to be enough to push the safety and well-being of everyone to the side of the road. Here's some more evidence to say no to ATVs on streets. Since it's not recognized as a motor vehicle, if a police officer happens to pull one over and an operator is cited for drinking while intoxicated, DWI, or OMVI, while operating an ATV UTV, the conviction will not appear on a person's driver's license. This is unacceptable. So if an ATV operator wants to avoid anything going on in their driver's license, the ATV becomes a better option to drive around. Now, please note that the state of Minnesota just enacted a new law on August 1st. New DWI law includes all motor vehicles. This is from the Duluth News Tribune on July 31st. It concerns Little Allen's Law. Until now, anyone convicted of driving a car or truck under the influence could still legally operate a snowmobile or ATV. That was a loophole state lawmakers and Governor Mark Dayton rushed to close after the death of 8-year-old Alan Gessenketter, who died in January after being struck by a snowmobile driver driven by a man whose driver's license was revoked after multiple DWI offenses. So this went in effect on August 1st, and it was the only motivation for lawmakers to go forward and close this loophole. A quote from Representative Ann Newell. The man who committed this crime had multiple DWIs. He had his license revoked previously. He had an ignition interlock on his vehicle. But because all of these incidents happened in a car, his privileges to drive snowmobiles, ATVs, and motorboats was untouched. Lawmakers pushed to revise Minnesota's law, closing a loophole that let people keep their off-road driving privileges, even if they got a DWI in a motor vehicle. Little Allen's law provides more consistent application of DWI laws regardless of what type of vehicle is being driven. See that Barb had mentioned about taking darkness out of the equation with sunrise to sunset. So now that, if this still doesn't phase your stance, let's go through what things have been added to the ordinance to make this banned activity acceptable within the city limits. So, users have a driver's license. It's amazing that a vehicle that can travel highway speeds does not actually need a valid driver's license to operate. So we have to add that. The user has to be at least 16. If we didn't put that in, 12-year-olds would be okay. Operator has to have liability insurance. Of course, if they choose to have that, and hopefully it covers driving a recreational off-road vehicle on paved streets, which the manufacturer is warned to never do. Wear a seatbelt, if applicable. This does not apply to ATVs because that's not part of their design, which is another reason showing how dangerous this is. For UTVs, the state law only says passengers have to wear seatbelts. So we have to add that UTV operators must wear seatbelts while driving on the streets. There should not be any open intoxicants in the vehicle. Unfortunately, this has to be specified because alcohol is part of this activity for many. If you don't want to believe that, just look at the DNR fatality statistics. Alcohol is involved in a majority of ATV accidents. So, some of you still might not be convinced or don't want to be, thinking that government is just getting in your way and we should just vote yes and be happy with some businesses that will get money from ATV users. Well, what does the city of Platteville get in return? There's no wheel tax collected. There's no vehicle registration fee. You offer that, but you don't have a price on that. Even the parking is free. So the city does not directly get any money for this change. What about that survey, you might ask? That non-scientific anonymous survey that represented less than 3% of the 12,000 citizens of the city? It's anecdotal and simply shows how split the thoughts of a few that took part in it. Amy Seabooth Wilson had mentioned the scientific aspects of studies, and that included showing how dangerous the activity is, especially on roads. One of those doctors, Dr. Charles Jennison, contacted the City Council about this ordinance. His email was similar to the article in the Telegraph Herald in mid-July entitled, "For Safety's Sake, Keep Off-Road Vehicles Off-Road." He is an emergency medicine physician at the University of Iowa, and his primary research area is on ATV-related injuries and injury prevention. He covered many things and ended with this. I hope that you carefully consider the consequences of opening public roads and streets to off-highway vehicle travel and recreational use. Opening roads to adults will inevitably increase ATV roadway use by children and teens as well. Even one serious injury or death would nullify any possible benefit this ordinance would have for some area residents. Unfortunately, this consequence is essentially assured if such a policy is passed. Here's something to consider. All these ATV, UTV operators are inexperienced drivers in city conditions. That means the level of experience driving with this vehicle on pavement and in traffic with other vehicles, pedestrians and bicyclists, through intersections with traffic lights is close to none. Unlike student drivers, you know, those marked vehicles that practice and practice with an instructor before taking a test for a license, there is no practice period for ATVs on roads. There's no test. That's not acceptable to allow. Bottom line is we're being asked to change the law and allow off-road vehicles on city streets and to ignore the warnings to never use on public roads. So tonight we vote on this. Now it might pass, and therefore all this evidence apparently does not matter. I still took my part in the democratic process, along with a small percentage of the city's residents, and that should always be part of the decisions that affect many. I thank everyone that took the time to email, call, or even come to the council meeting. It still won't change the fact that these are dangerous vehicles. It just means that every resident and visitor of the city will have to deal with the hazards. Or it will not pass and the streets will not have this extra danger. Thanks.
Thank you. All right. Unless there are other comments from council members, we do have a motion and a second, and I would call the vote.
Fine.
Yes.
Francis,
No.
Stockhausen,
Yes.
Killian,
No.
Nichols,
Yes.
Sharp,
No.
Doss,
Yes.
carries 4-3 on a roll call vote.
Thank you. All right. I appreciate the applause. I appreciate everybody's participation. I also know that this was a 4-3 vote. So please, I guess, for those of you who are going to be driving in city streets, you will be watched. So we all hope it all works out just fine.
Madam President, could I also suggest that during this year, this is basically a year trial period, that the city staff collect information about complaints, about tickets, about all of those kinds of things, and that within, after probably by the 1st of January or so, that a committee be formed of folks to review that and to analyze that information. I really do think, and I've had conversations with many of you, you know that my personal opinion is that these vehicles don't belong on streets. I've shared that with any number of people. I also realize that there is a trend toward this, and I'm willing to, as I proposed, give that a chance. That being said, it was a very sad day today when I had a friend of mine contact me and say, hey, it was really nice that that ATV could drive on your streets and make delivery to my house today. And I said, well, that ATV was not driving legally on our streets. So it's already occurring, so I would, as Eileen said, this ordinance expires at the end of November 14th, 2019. That means there would have to be a new ordinance enacted. This was not just a review, it was a motion with a total, I mean, it's done November 14th, 2019.
All right, we have other issues before us this evening, information and discussion, so we're going to go forward with that. Again, thank you all for coming. Thank you for your participation.
Thank you for your hard work. I appreciate it, I really do.
All right, the next item is information and discussion. Highway Safety Improvement Program, Business Highway 151. Howard?
Yes, thank you very much. For many years, there have been crashes on Business Highway 151 that can be attributed to turning traffic. In conjunction with the DOT, we reviewed a 5-year period from 2011 to 2015 and determined that there was a higher crash rate than the state average. And we have those totals. Working with the Wisconsin DOT, we submitted a Highway Safety Improvement Program funding request for improvements on this section of road. The emphasis would be to reduce traffic crashes due to turning movements. And the proposed solution would be to overlay the entire pavement with a thin overlay, the same sort of thing that we do every year, and then repaint it so that there's 3 lanes, 1 in each direction, and a center left turn lane. Traffic engineers call it a 2-way left turn lane. And an example of that is Water Street between Business 151 and Pine Street. That's what it would look like. So from Staley Avenue to Water Street, what we do is we take the existing wide shoulders, we narrow them up, and we put in a 3rd lane. We keep the turn lanes as they are on Water Street, and then from Water Street to East Side Road, we do the same thing. We narrow up the shoulders, we put in a center turn lane. From East Side Road to the divided 4-lane road by the A&W, the 4 lanes will be reconfigured to 3 lanes. There will be separated left turn lanes with signals. One of the things that I forgot about was East Side Road. We will have dedicated left turn lanes with signals. Right now, it's you wait for a clear turn to be able to turn off of Business 151. That intersection would have dedicated left turn lanes and left turn signals. When we come up to Inside Drive Keystone Parkway, we would have separated left turn lanes with signals in both directions for those left turns at the Inside Drive and Keystone Parkway. One of the components that we included were pedestrian improvements. The intersection at Water Street would have handicapped accessible pathways with pedestrian signals, and sidewalks would connect to the trail at the Super 8. And then there would be a pedestrian bicycle trail on the south side of Business 151 from the Roundtree Branch Trail at the bridge crossing by the Novus, and it would take you all the way to East Side Road. And there would be pedestrian signal crossings at the East Side Road intersection to connect to those trails to the existing sidewalk. This would be a proposed project with design in 2019 and construction in 2020. There will be time to do additional public outreach and engagement and make minor, I say again, minor adjustments to the plan. What we have is we have a 90-10 split. The DOT recommended that this be done and is willing to pay 90% of the cost of this. Budgeted cost, $1.15 million, with the city expected to provide 10% or $115,000. So anything above any of the budgeted costs must be paid 100% by the city. Any major changes in scope must be approved by the DOT. We do have a proposed state municipal agreement for this project. And so now DOT is asking us to go ahead and sign this so that they can start working with us to get design firm to help do these do the final designs for this. So that's what I have.
Any questions for Howard?
how far does this, is that a walking trail from Water Street all the way out? Is that what that red line is on your proposed maps?
The red line on the proposed map, what that would be is a shared use pedestrian bicycle trail, similar to what we have on Water Street, similar to what we have on East Side Road. It would connect with the existing MPO David Canny Trail right there by the Napa Novus driveway, and continue on the south side of the road all the way out to East Side Road, where it would connect with the East Side Road Trail and the sidewalks coming back into Mineral Street.
So Howard, can you clarify, I think Barb is probably wondering the same thing. Is there a green space between this bicycle pedestrian pathway and the roadway? Or is there simply a line on the roadway that says pedestrians and bicycles are on this side of the line, cars are on that side of the line?
The intent is that there will be separation. How much is left to the design, but it is not intended to be just a painted line on the edge of a street. We haven't done the final designs, but it would be separated.
Was that your question, Barb?
Yes.
Whether it was gonna be.
Okay, I'm sorry.
No, I just don't want to see I want to see sidewalks or something to get to Walmart. You know, that's convenient and safe. And that is something I'm going to look at.
Doesn't get all the way there, but it's
Well,
halfway.
as close as you can get, I guess.
And I guess I would just comment that I think the first year that I was here, we had looked at this issue and found that it was just prohibitively expensive to be able to add that amenity. So I think this is a fantastic opportunity to be able to accommodate those users, in addition to having Business 151 overlaid, which is also quite expensive.
But, so it covers a huge amount of the expense, but there's still gaps. So do we expect that, and am I wrong in thinking that some of it is the property owners were told they might have to install sidewalks eventually out there? Are there some ways we can start filling in the gaps? Because we don't want them to get out to Kmart and then not have anywhere else to go, especially on the right side, but out past the bank, then.
I think that would be a separate council discussion with respect to whether or not you either wanted to look at funding additional improvements through the CIP or some other funding mechanism, such as requiring folks to put in sidewalks.
And did I miss the area from the corner, Melio's to Napa, doesn't have anything?
They did not have that as part of the project, because what they're looking at is we do have the MPO trail that provides some pedestrian bicycle access. It happens to be in the back of all of those properties and it's hard to get to. That would be something that we could look at as a possible minor accommodation. But we would have to look at, who's going to fund that and how they're going to fund that. I know that some of those properties had it listed in their conditional use permits or other permits that they needed to be able to provide sidewalks at some point in the future. Not all of those properties had a condition like that placed upon them, but that's, as the city manager said, that could be a future discussion.
Howard, from the intersection of Water and 151, and if you go west, so you're going toward Country Kitchen, there is no walkway planned in that
No.
area or any crossing. I mean, obviously, we know that the annex is very busy, and I believe that Mr. Utley just purchased some land across from his business for extra parking, which I think was a good idea, but that is certainly a busy intersection. So we don't have anything in the plans to accommodate that.
This was done prior to Mr. Utley acquiring that property, as far as I know. That could be a point of discussion as a minor improvement, maybe, to look at some form of a pedestrian crossing. I can't promise that, but we could certainly approach the DOT and say, hey, look, this has happened since we've done this project or done this proposal. There are pedestrians going back and forth across the highway in this location. Can we include some provision for that? That's all I can do at this point.
It's not uncommon to see staff people for those restaurants walking that stretch of highway on the, on the north side, I guess is what they tend to do, but it seems they are showing us a need. And then also I'm trying to double check, but the trail down by Culver's when it crosses from Valley View Road. Am I right? Is there?
Valley Road.
Valley Road. There's not a pedestrian crosswalk. Does it go under now?
It goes under the,
Okay.
it goes under the
I need to
road.
go on it again over there. Okay. Okay.
Any other questions for Howard on this proposal? I think it's a great proposal, Howard. At least I feel that way, because I think this is an area that we've talked about and are hoping to make improvements for safety of pedestrians and drivers. All right. No other comments on the conditional use permit on 1425 East Business Highway 151, Joe?
Yes, we've received a request for a conditional use permit for 1425 East Business Highway 151, which is the former Kmart property. The purchasers are interested in using that property as a U-Haul moving and storage facility. So that would include the rental of U-Haul trucks and trailers, which actually is a permitted use in the B3 district. But in addition to that, they would like to use the existing building for storage purposes. Basically, they would take the interior of that building and install small units that people could rent for personal storage on their own, similar to some of the self-storage buildings we have throughout the city. They would sell moving equipment, moving supplies. They would install trailer hitches, sell boxes, tape, and the like. They also had included in their proposal the construction of an additional storage building on the east side of that building, the existing building, but they had indicated that would basically be a future construction, because they would have quite a bit of space inside the existing building to fill up first. Otherwise, the building essentially would remain the same as it is now. It would just be some minor modifications to the structure to accommodate that use. So the self-storage proposed use is the part that requires a conditional use approval. This did go to the Planning Commission for their review and recommendation, and I would say, to summarize, most of the concerns I think that came up at the Planning Commission were potential other uses on that property involving storage, primarily boats, RVs, that type of use, which is not part of their proposal. But the Planning Commission wanted to make sure that that was not part of the approval, that it was very clear that that would be a future approval, application and approval. And the Planning Commission also felt there wasn't enough information on that additional storage building that they would like to construct. And since they don't really need that construction immediately, the Planning Commission is also recommending that additional building be a future review and approval. The representative that was at that meeting seemed to be fine with most of those items, because I think he recognized there's a lot of space to fill up before they get to that point. So based on those changes, I think staff would agree with the recommendation, and would recommend approval with those considerations for this use. Any questions?
And Joe, after the Plan Commission meeting, we did get a message from the owners of the property to the east of that building, the Ashley Furniture Store, mentioning perhaps their concerns about turning that area into somehow an unsightly area for other retail establishments like theirs. That's what I took from that.
I also interpreted that they were just concerned about the sheer volume of people that wouldn't be coming into that space. Is that correct? Is that what this little use comparison thing is about? That we would be ineffective if we chose that as the business to be there, then we're not drawing crowds of people every day to that area for Ashley or for Taco John's or just in general.
Yeah,
Was that part
I
of
thought it was interesting that the applicant was using that as a selling point because there's less traffic. And the neighbor was using that as a concern because there's less potential customers for him. So I guess it depends on how you want to look at that change of.
The planning commission really addressed that issue or how they?
No, like I mentioned, I think the plan commission was more concerned, and the neighbor was also raised that as a concern about the appearance that may come with additional storage of other items on the property outside of the building. That could be a more major concern because of the junkyard effect that could come with who knows what's in the store there and what it's going to look like. So that's why their recommendation was that's not included here. Let's just deal with the building as it sits there now first and consider anything else at a future meeting.
That letter arrived after the Plan Commission met, so we didn't have that opinion, his view.
So
to
help
consider.
me understand who weighs that option specifically. Like, how do we attract a certain type of business to help the neighboring business property, or how do we decide?
I guess this is a private property that was being marketed through a commercial real estate firm that was engaged by the property owner. So the city doesn't necessarily have an active role in marketing that site. I know certainly that, I guess, had the private, generally how it works is that if there's a private market failure, then the city might be more actively engaged. And in this property in particular, it would likely be Padic, just because of the property's location and the types of uses that would be likely to go in there.
I think that gets at part of what I was asking, but maybe I meant to ask more in the sense of when it's designated to be a type of property in the overall plan, there's a reason why. And is that what we're kind of looking at, is if we're going to make some exception to how it was zoned in order to allow that business there?
Well, I think the concept of a conditional use is that it gives you the ability to look at that particular use at that particular location and make a decision whether there's going to be some external impacts that you might not want to have at that location for the community that could be a detriment, and try to address those through conditions that are placed on the approval. That's kind of the concept. But I guess I look at from a community standpoint, they're primarily looking at internal uses of that building, which I would see having a hard time making a connection that's going to be a negative impact in the community. It's really not going to be a physical change to the property that anybody would really notice. As far as reduced traffic, I mean, you look at all the businesses that are located along Business Highway 151, there's a wide variety of businesses that are permitted by right. They all have vastly different volumes of business that they have, traffic and so forth, customers. So how do we choose what the adequate level is before we say it's appropriate? That's a very difficult decision to make, I think.
And Joe, is it correct, it's not, it's zoned for mixed use, correct, or for multiple uses?
Well, it's zoned B3 highway business, which does allow by right a pretty wide variety of business uses. I mean, basically that entire corridor is zoned B3. So you know, you just imagine driving along there. There's quite a variety of uses. So and they're also, you know, right across the street behind Advanced Auto Parts is self-storage units. Behind the bowling alley, which is not too far away, is self-storage units. So it's not a drastic change to the types of uses that are already there.
Okay, any other questions or comments for Joe?
My thought is getting in and out of that parking lot. Did they mention how they're gonna do that? But I suppose with 3 lanes coming up, it might not be that difficult. Because with, you know, when it's 4-lane and you have a stoplight, it can be difficult to make a left turn, but I'm sure people figure it out. They have access to East Side Road to
Right.
get out of that parking lot.
There's 2 driveways onto East Side Road. There's also a connection between the parking lot for this property and the parking lot to Ashley Furniture. So that gives them another access point onto Business Highway 151 as well.
Joe, who's the owner of the access between those 2 buildings?
They're both private properties that have just basically in the years past agreed to allow the connection between their properties. I think with the idea of what the gentleman wrote the letter to encourage, you know, more customers
Right.
to access their businesses.
But that's not a public.
It's not a public alley. There's no public easement that I'm aware of. It's just
Okay.
an agreement between the adjoining property.
Between the landowners.
Right.
Maybe a selling point to Ashley is if I moved to town and dropped off my U-Haul and saw a furniture store next door, it might be one of my first stops. No.
All right. Any other questions or comments? Otherwise, I need a motion to go into closed session.
Second.
And if you would read it, please, Barb, if you've got it up
Yes,
on your
yes.
screen or whatever.
Sorry,
because
I
My
realized-
understanding is we are to read it so people understand why we're going into closed.
Yes, I realized that was appropriate. So, we go into I move we go into closed session per Wisconsin statute 19.85(1)(c), considering employment, promotion, compensation, or performance evaluation data of any public employee over which the governmental body has jurisdiction or exercises responsibility, - city manager evaluation.
We did have a second?
Second.
All right, we'll vote.
Second it.
Tina.
Robin. Klein.
Yes.
Francis.
Yes.
Stockhausen.
Yes.
Killian.
Yes.
Nichols.
Yes.
Sharp.
Yes.
Doss.
Yes.
All right.
Carries 7-0.
All right, so we're going off camera and we'll adjourn after our meeting.